On behalf of, where I, Dara Kalima, the community poet, speak to folks who speak on behalf of their respective communities. So, business at hand, hit that subscribe button because if you're listening now, you're going to love what you hear next. And you probably have heard it before, so you're going to love before. So why are you not just subscribing? Hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening, watching. And there's another button you can press that helps me out a little bit. I'm going to work on my words because that's cool. But you can help me out a little bit by pressing that button that lets you just send like $5 a month in my direction because it be costing a few dollars to do this. So, but if you don't, that's cool. No worries. I still got a 9 to 5, so I'll keep going. You'll still keep getting great entertainment. But that all said, that's the business. That's out of the way. Today's guest. I've known today's guest for a very, 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 very long time. I just made us both sound really old. That's okay. We have our share of grades. We've probably made ourselves grade together, but we've laughed together. So that's where the grades came from. We have definitely put in laugh lines into each other's face. That is not to say that this will be a funny episode. Who knows? But we're sort of hilarious together. So take it however you will. I'm just going to say I love this person immensely. They have a lot of knowledge to share. And I think they will, if you're interested in the industry that they're in, you may want to listen in so you can learn some more from them, or maybe not, whatever, you'll figure it out. But I'm going to stop talking because I'm a little bit rambly. Hey, friend, tell folks your name.
Hey, I am Jim McCarthy.
Hey, Jim. What are your pronouns?
My pronouns are he, him.
Hey, Jim. I'm so glad you're on the show. I can't even tell you. I'm so excited. So I know a lot about you, but I always find that I still don't know a lot about you because, we've had those moments where you're like, what? Tell me the story after all of these years. So for all these folks who don't know anything about you, possibly, tell them some stuff about you.
Yeah, I am a literary agent. I've worked at the same company for 24 years, which is kind of crazy to think about. I started as an intern in 1999, and I am still there. I live in New York, as I always have, always within about 10 miles of where I am right now. I'm a married, middle-aged, unfortunately middle-aged, happily married. Literary agent. That's me in a nutshell.
So wait, is Westchester 10 miles away?
Yeah, so I was born at St. Vincent's in Greenwich Village. And if you went a straight line, it's only like 10 miles to Mamaroneck, the town I grew up in.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it's wildly close.
I've walked 13 miles in a day. So what you're telling me is if I could walk over water.
Yeah. I mean, now that you're talking about it, I am doubting my facts and feeling like I've made it up. But
maybe, that doesn't seem right, but because Manhattan potentially is totally 14 wrong. Miles.
Okay. I feel like if you walked over the Long Island Sound, it's like 10 to 15 miles.
No, I would go 15. Okay. Maybe. I don't know. I think if you can walk on water and go directly, it's very possible. Because I think it's about the angle. Because you would not go straight through Manhattan to get to Mamaroneck, because Mamaroneck's a little bit over to the side. So you would go. Yeah, I wouldn't argue that too much with you. Maybe.
I'll fact check it later.
So either way, I did not realize you were born down here. So there's that. See, look, I've known you for how long? Pretty much longer than you've been in that job.
Yeah, even longer. The earlier 90s than when I started my job.
I knew you since you were in high school.
That is true.
I remember you going to your prom.
You were early in college when we first met, right? Because you're only a year or two.
Yeah, just a year. I was a freshman in college when we met.
Okay, there you go.
That's why I remember your prom. We will not talk about your prom, but I remember your prom well.
No need.
Which is crazy.
It was a different time.
So well. So, I don't know. Anyway, so what communities do you know? I should have said in the introduction, if you've ever read my memoir, if I can I out you? I'm gonna out you.
Sure.
If you've ever read my memoir, Still Laughing, there's a character in it called Dennis who gave me back my laugh. Ta-da! This is Jim. He gave me back my laugh. And so this is why I'm probably chuckling already, because nothing but silliness happens when you get 2 or 3 of us together. So that all said, what communities do you represent or are you part of?
I mean, reference to my prom makes me first think that I am sober and have been for about 15 years now. So I identify with that community. I'm a theater geek. I'm a gay guy. I am an ex-Catholic. Who else? I'm clinically anxious. Those are the main ones. And then like I don't know what generation I'm part of. I feel like I am the dregs of Gen X. But by a calendar, I might be like just squeezing into elder millennial.
So I think because we're only a year apart, that you probably still make Gen X. And of course, I'm checking.
Okay.
Oh, there you go. You do just make Gen X. Because we are a year apart. You're the last year of Gen
Feels
X.
right.
But that makes us both Zennials too.
I'll take it.
Which I think makes so much sense as well. Because yeah, no matter what, like I used to fight my siblings about like, no, I'm Gen X, and they're like, no, I think you're too young. I'm like, no, I'm Gen X with you. I am the same generation. I really was very adamant about that. So I own my Gen X very. Oh my gosh, there's this woman on Instagram who represents for Gen X, and she does so amazingly. And then some millennial person wrote a poem to Gen X, and it was so touching. And it was like, and then so she wrote a letter back to the millennials, and it was like, who cut the onions? It was very beautiful. You guys need to find it. I don't know who anyone's names are on Instagram, but there's a whole beautiful conversation between the generations. And then they were like, well, Gen Z must be lost. And I was like, no, Gen Z got it together. But that's not the whole conversation we're here to have. But yes.
But I could talk about it for quite some time.
Yes, me too. And I just like lost my question somewhere because screens. I'm the person with a million tabs open in my head and on my computer right now. So, any other communities? Like you are in what community now? Do you live in? You live in somewhere, don't you? Live in?
I'm in Astoria now.
Yeah,
I'm
see.
not newly. I have lived here for over 3 years, which is the longest I've lived anywhere since my childhood home. So yeah, I usually
Really?
move. Yeah, I move
Even the
like
Upper West Side was shorter than this?
Upper West Side was 2 years only. And before that, downtown Brooklyn, and before that, Carroll Gardens. I was like around the corner from Madison Square Garden for a little bit. I move constantly.
But you haven't lived in the Bronx, huh?
I've not lived in the Bronx.
So you just hate us now? What's up with that? I'm just messing with
Yeah,
you.
no, it's my least favorite borough. It's not true. That's not true. We all know Staten Island exists. We don't like to admit it, but we know it exists.
It's true. It's true. So yeah, so you really are. I mean, like you're a non-New Yorker, New Yorker. Like it because like you're like if you're from America, you're like, you're not really a New Yorker, but you have
Yeah.
been here. You've
For
been
a
here.
minute, yeah. I mean, no, I was not raised in New York City, so I don't feel like I get full credit, but I've been somewhere in the boroughs for 25 years.
And I found there's one more thing community you're part of that you and I share.
Mm-hmm.
We're NYU alumni.
That is true.
So
There's so
another
many of us.
community. Yeah, we're all over the place. The last and well, one of the interviews I already did also was another NYU alumni. She went to the law school. So
Nice.
yes. Okay. So which community are we specifically talking about today, Jim?
We're talking about publishing and being a literary agent.
Awesome. So how did you even get there? Like how did, and you said you were an intern, like how did that even happen?
Yeah, so I am an NYU alum. I worked, as you well know, at a music store through high school, saving up money so that I could uh, sustain myself when I went to college. And I saved up money for all 4 years, and then I spent it all in my freshman year. So I desperately needed more money ASAP. And I went on the NYU job board and sent out, I want to say like 40 resumes. And Stacy Glick, who I still work with, was the first person to call me back. And I interviewed 1 or 2 days after that and accepted the job by the end of the week. So I started part time in 99 and I kept quitting. I was studying urban design. I thought I was going to go work for like the MTA or the Landmarks Commission. But I loved the job. And every time I wanted to come back, they had me. They just welcomed me back in. And then when I graduated, a full-time job opened up. Somebody left about 2 weeks before I graduated. And so a position opened. And I remember one of my now bosses saying, if you start here, you can't quit anymore. Um, and I started full time. And lo and behold, I have not quit. And it's been literal decades.
Wow. Wow. I love those stories because that's like my story of getting my first desk job. There was like an application. Do you know anything about Jewish culture? Must know something about Jewish culture. I was like, I got Jewish friends. I'm gonna apply.
You're like, I got this.
And like literally, that's how I ended up in philanthropy. Like I had no idea what I was applying for. I was like, data entry. I know computers and I know Jewish people. Let's go.
Yeah. I didn't know what a literary agent was. I had no idea what the job meant. I just knew I liked to read. And so I was like, I'm willing, I'm open. And
Wow. And
yeah,
you do read a
here
heck
we
of a
are.
lot, huh?
I do.
So like I know you when you go on vacation, you always have like a or the holiday break, you always have a crap ton of books you're reading. But like how many like manuscripts are you reading like in a week for work?
Oh, that's hard. I'm probably getting through chunks of 10 manuscripts a week. So
Okay.
some of those 3 or 4 I'm reading in full, and there are usually like 6 or 7 that I read part of and then decide aren't quite right for me. But yeah, my sort of like the standard is that I have at any moment usually like 35 manuscripts waiting to be read. And I
Mm,
try to get through them all within 4 to 6 weeks of receiving them. So it's just sort of like a never-ending race to try to keep up with whatever's oldest and not go past my sort of like self-imposed deadlines.
got it. Wow. You have to love reading.
You do, and I mean very happily, and I wouldn't still be doing it 24 years later if I didn't. But yeah, it's pretty great.
So
It's always
you said it's not something's not for you. What type of what type of books are you working on? Like do you work on?
yeah. I do almost exclusively fiction. I do a lot of children's work in the teen and middle grade spaces. Lately, I've been looking for more adult fiction. Kind of, I like to say I'm just realizing now that I use so many terms that are just like exclusive to the community. I was going to say, like, I love elevated commercial work, which is a meaningless thing to say. I like smart books. I like smart books that aren't too pretentious.
Mm.
That's what I'm looking for. And I love elements of fantasy. I love a good thriller. Yeah, but just sort of like fiction that excites me.
Okay. Interesting. So why the change to adults? Or not from kids, but you said you were looking towards adults lately.
Yeah, I just read so much adult fiction for pleasure. It's where I've always gone when I'm reading just for myself. Um, and so I got my start in YA fiction, and that's where I sort of made a name for myself and have been lucky enough to kind of establish a reputation there. And I'll always do it. I really love it. But I feel like I've been doing the job for long enough that I can kind of incorporate a few more of the projects that
Mm.
are a little bit more me, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay. I was like, I have a bunch of normal questions that I ask everyone, but I almost don't want to go there yet. But I'm like, So like, I'm like, I want to jump there. Don't. This is the conversations I have in my head. I'm sorry,
I,
everyone listening to this, and I'm sorry, Jim, for you,
I will
but you know
follow
me.
wherever you end up.
You know me, so whatever. This is what we do. Um, so tell me something beautiful about your community or something beautiful you've experienced because you've been in this community.
Oh, wow. I will say, even though I just was talking about doing a little bit less in the children's publishing space, something that I really love is that people who write for children are so earnest and so thoughtful. And watching it become a much more inclusive space over the past 20 years has been really beautiful. There's just a lot of activism coming out of the children's writing community. Um, and you get the opportunities sometimes to really hear from young readers who were profoundly affected by the work that you had some role in ushering to readers.
Mm,
And you know, it's corny, but I think about, you know, growing up in the 90s and not really seeing many gay characters in popular culture. And I remember the first time I saw a young adult novel that had gay characters, and it was really impactful. And sort of seeing that moment of discovery, of sort of positive self-reflection is being opened up to so many more people feels really beautiful.
So I have a very complicated question to ask. And if you say
Sure.
Nunya, please say Nunya. And we will cut it out.
Mhm.
Um, but I was so for birthdays, for children's birthdays, you always ask to like find a book for like get a book for a child. And so I usually default to like Shel Silverstein because I'm a poet, but it's children's poetry, but there's always a good meaning to it. And I keep running into like, what is his name? Ezra Keats? Was that his name? Uh Ezra, it's Ezra something, isn't it?
Sounds very familiar.
Ezra, I'm gonna look it up right now. Ezra, maybe it's not Keats, but Ezra Jack Keats. And he wrote a lot of children's books. He did the Snow Day,
Oh, yeah,
the
yeah,
Snowy
yeah.
Day. Um, and I loved all those books because I always saw kids that look like me on those covers and the artwork. But I was a white man writing these books. So you said this thing about, seeing the diversity happening and now. And I mean, for then he was, pushing the envelope, putting books out there with other images, but now it's almost like black facing in writing. So how is that? I guess like the question is sort of tied to, have you run into that, or how are you knowing the right versus the wrong as you're trying to bring in that diversity to that writing area?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really, yeah, it's a kind of complicated multi-pronged question that I don't I don't have all, I mean, I don't at all have all the right answers for. I mean, because there's so many questions, and you sort of have to start with one of the biggest problems being that historically publishing is a very upper middle class white industry. And that has persisted for probably hundreds of thousands of reasons, but you're not going to get the best representation until you have sort of until the gatekeepers reflect the communities that you're trying to reach. So you know I think there is a priority being put on diversifying the staffs of publishers and in agency communities, which in turn is feeding and being fed by the push to improve uh, the demographics of who is being published. So it's always a question of trying to balance questions I don't know that I can always correctly answer, but it's about trying to find people who are approaching their own communities, but all communities with sort of honesty and direct communication, um, and trying to find kind of where my own limitations are and how to kind of feed my own learning journey in a way that supports people I want to be supported. Just sort of a non-answer. It's a lot of like, we're just trying to be better and trying to I think the goal is just to reach all readers. And there are a lot of roadblocks to that happening, but it's kind of taking it a step at a time.
No, that's fair. I mean, I purposefully now, especially with his books, as much as I love them as a kid, those are not the books I tell people to get. I mean, I'd rather get someone who's clearly who they are than someone
Yeah.
who's not, So like I would get you Shel Silverstein because it's a poet that I love.
Yeah.
Opposed to getting you someone who's putting my face on the cover, but they're not me, So, but it's just interesting. Like when I realized that, I was like, oh, I don't like that anymore. He
Yeah.
was a favorite as a kid.
But I mean, the happy thing is that things that we either had to accept or found it in ourselves to celebrate, we don't have to anymore. You know, there are Black women writing and illustrating picture books of their own. So you don't have to look to the snow day to find a Black female face. And that is an improvement. And so I don't think that negates the positive effect he had on you when you were a child,
Mm-hmm.
but it does mean it doesn't have to be positive for new generations, which is growth, I think.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's true. And it was something that just came to my mind because you had talked about the moving point. And it's still such a very, like a lot of us hold on to those books as we were kids, but we also need to maybe as consumers change who we're consuming.
Yeah.
Because I think it was probably groundbreaking back then, but also not now,
Yeah.
So yeah. Has there been like a difficult moment you've had in this industry or any like things you wish you did differently as a agent? There's a
Yeah.
whole physical response to that question.
It's so, yes, there are tons of things I would have done differently. I don't even really know where to start. It's Yeah, I mean, I've been in the same place for so long and I've changed so much that there are so many things that I wish I knew when I started. There are so many things that have changed over the years. But I don't know. I try to think of it all as sort of like learning and growing, and the things I didn't know then, I didn't know, and now I do. So I try to do better work. But there are always like projects that either projects I passed on that have gone on to great success, or projects that I offered to represent and somebody else beat me and won the right to represent, that I always like shake my fist like if only I could have done it too. But yes, yes. I don't want to get too like in the weeds,
No, of course, of course.
but as somebody who's sort of prone to self-criticism, yes, there are many things I would have changed.
So have you had an amazing win that you're really proud of? And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I'm a sucker for the first time I do anything. Like there, I always have new goals, new things I want to hit. You know, when I first
Wait,
started,
wait, 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 wait,
yeah,
wait. You're frozen on my screen. There we go. Okay.
okay,
So you want to answer that question? Start that answer again.
yeah. I would say that I'm very goal oriented, and when I first started agenting, sort of at the forefront of my mind from day one, I thought, get a New York Times bestseller. And then I got a New York Times bestseller, and my brain, rather than feeling any satisfaction, said, okay, get a #1 New York Times bestseller. And there's so many things to wish for, whether they're kind of sales oriented or if it's having someone win a specific award. Um, for a long time, I wanted to have one of the New York Times 100 notable books of the year. It was very important to me to hit that list. And I just did that for the first time in 2022. Yeah. My client, Rashid Newson, was on for his book, My Government Means to Kill Me, which is brilliant and adult literary fiction, this space I'm sort of expanding more into. So having sort of very intentionally decided that this is something I wanted to do more of, and then seeing it lead to so much acclaim for the author, is beautiful, and it's so heartening. So anytime one of my clients get those wins, I always feel like I have like a little percentage of the celebration to claim for myself.
So what is it like? So for people who don't even know what a literary agent is, let's backtrack a little bit to that. What
Yep,
does that like look like, mean? Like what is that? Where's your part in the process of getting people's books out there?
sure. So people send me query letters where they basically pitch their book and include a chapter or two, and I decide what I want to request. And from there, I read the projects and decide who I want to work with. And once I have someone on board, I work with them editorially, shaping the project, getting it to where the author and I both feel like it's in its best shape, it's ready for the marketplace, and I send it out to a select group of editors with the ultimate goal is to cause a bidding war and get multiple publishers to offer on a manuscript and drive the price up. But really, the underlying goal always is to find the right publisher for the project and a good home where these books will be well cared for. And then after the sale, I'm sort of the person who sticks around. I'm helping navigate the relationship between the editor and author. I'm offering feedback on cover design. I'm helping people understand what royalty statements mean and why they see a certain percentage for some sales and a different percentage for others. And then I'm career planning and trying to help people decide what to do next, how to pace themselves, how to grow their brand and career. So it's sort of, I feel like it's part editor, part coach, part therapist, and part cheerleader. Just trying to get people through the incredibly difficult process that is publishing with as much of their sanity intact as humanly possible.
Wow. That's a lot.
It is a lot. It is, I mean, yeah, it's wonderful because it means that I get to work really closely with a lot of people that I just believe in. And
Mm.
that's really joyful.
I will say you didn't say it as the beautiful part, but one of my favorite things, and I don't think you're on Twitter anymore, but one of the things that I loved seeing was the people in which you've worked with, the authors in which you've worked with, celebrating you, or the connection with you as their books have come out and such. So I definitely agree with you to not be on that platform anymore for so many reasons. But I miss seeing that bit of celebration that used to happen too, because it's like, oh, he did another book and that person's coming out again. That's really exciting. So that's a beautiful thing about the community too, that you didn't share, but I'm going to share on your behalf because
Oh, thank
show.
you.
My pleasure. So is there any unique fact about your community you want to share?
Oh, wow. I'm not sure. What is a unique fact about literary agents? I feel like,
Or the writing, I mean, or like the publishing community. You can go a little broader if you need to.
yeah, what is it? It's so, hmm, you've stumped me. I don't know why this is the question that I suddenly find
This is the
incredibly
question everyone
difficult.
gets stumped on. That's why I ask it.
Is that true?
Yes.
That makes me feel a little better.
This one and the next one throws everyone all the time.
I think that I've always found it really interesting to see there's a very sharp divide in amongst publishing people between people who got into it because they wanted to write, and this was a way to get to the center of that business, and another community of people who have zero interest in writing but are diehard readers and only want to support other people on the journey. And I think there's some not really friction between the two camps, but I do think there it's interesting to watch that dynamic at play. People and I just read this novel. I just read a romance novel over the weekend called Book Lovers, and it's a rom-com between a literary agent and an editor. And we find out that the literary agent's dream has always been to be an editor, not to be an agent. And I found this ridiculous, but also very interesting because I do wonder if more people in publishing aspire to their own creative successes than we
Mm,
necessarily realize.
mm.
That's a question I keep asking myself about.
No, because you also wrote a chapter in a book too.
I did. I one of my clients edited an anthology, and she was kind enough to invite me to participate. I felt like a fraud taking part, but I also felt kind of incredible. And I have spent many, many years telling anyone who will listen that I have no writing aspirations. And so sitting down and writing that story and seeing it published really sort of exposed my lie to myself, which has been really interesting. And maybe that's why I'm so kind of focused on how people in publishing address or don't address their own creative aspirations, because it's a question that I'm asking myself very actively
Mm.
several years into the process.
It's interesting because, I think, that's such an interesting, it, so for people who don't know, not about you, but because this is a conversation,
Mhm.
I'm an author, but I also now, somebody has called me a book doula after I helped her get her book out. I just help self-published authors get their books out as well. And there is an interesting thing between creating for yourself and helping others create. And it's a different line. And even as I try to edit writing now, because I've taken a copy editing class and I'm toying with the idea of getting certified. Copy editing is, ugh. But it's also,
It's tough. Copy
it
editors are
is.
the unsung heroes of
They really
the
are.
literary world.
I have so much more appreciation. And I edited a document the other day and someone wanted to keep telling me there were too many commas. And I just bowed down to them, knowing they were wrong, because I was just like, I'm not gonna fight you anymore. That there should be there should be two commas here. There was accidentally one comma less than there was, but there was supposed to be two because the whole point of the statement was like a side thought, and
Mm-hmm.
the sentence would have worked perfectly fine without that little extra piece in there. But you want to completely remove the commas, and you want to tell me over multiple times over that it didn't. Okay, all right. So but there's definitely, like, you could almost get lost outside of your own creative world when you start helping other people generate their own creative things too. So it's a very, and it's a slippery slope almost, because then you're like, I don't need to do it anymore. Other people are doing it. And or you're just so busy helping others that you don't need to invest the same way in.
But there's something so satisfying about helping someone find an answer to their work.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Like,
I mean, I love mentoring writers. I
mm,
love I love teaching. Like, I haven't said it yet, and maybe this will be the introduction of me saying it. This will be the first place I say it, so it's going to be said for the first time here. Is that I, good Lord willing, within 2 years, I will be teaching again.
I
I
love
will be doing
that.
some type of workshop, more consistently. I will be leading something bigger than what I'm doing now. And I don't know how, because I don't really have the capacity, but I just feel so drawn to helping people really. And like, an opportunity came for this summer that I'm going to try to do. It's just a workshop, but I want to do all the free things I can do now so I can start getting paid for it in the next year or two more, because I just want more under my belt. Because there's something so gratifying to be like, and I helped birth that.
Yeah.
And
And it
it's so
makes so
great.
much sense to me that that is something you aspire to. Like it just fits in a way that feels like of course that's what you need to do.
I guess, but but as we're going back to you now, there's something about, there's, to do that, you have to be really altruistic or in denial about what you have the capability of doing. And while at this moment, I don't even know where the book is because you saw my desk. Um, when I find the signed copy of the book, from Christmas, man, I just unearthed a book that someone gave me for Christmas like a year ago or my birthday. I don't know. So I got a lot of books to get through. But that all said, when I find it, I started reading your story before. And I was so, and I mean, I know it's sort of based in some stuff and not or whatever, but like, I was really pulled into the world you built and created in that story. So, and about words enough to know how to create worlds and spaces. So
Thank
maybe
you.
you can do more with that now that you've seen it on paper and not just as agent, or as a thank
Well,
you. in a book.
You and my therapist both can encourage me.
I will encourage you forever because I am
I
Team
appreciate it.
Jim always. I mean, even there's only one fight I chose your husband over you on, and that was recently. If you noticed that, and
And
on
listen,
that one, I don't remember what it was, but he was right. So
it happens. It does happen.
almost every other time, I'm Team Jim. Not even by default, but just like it's just like, yeah, no, you're right. But that time, so. As I was thinking about this, totally, I'm gonna pivot completely away from the topic for a second. There's a
Yep.
community you dropped off by accident, and I'm not gonna let you not mention it because you took some awesome pictures. And I know that if I walked into your door any moment, I would be attacked. So you're also a dog dad.
I am a dog dad. I mean, yeah, no. And it's like one of my most important traits, I think. Winston is 10. He's the first dog I ever had. I grew up terrified of dogs. I had my next door neighbors had a very poorly behaved Doberman Pinscher who, when I was like 2 or 3 years old, scratched up my back. He bit like a chunk of flesh out of my sister's back when he got loose one day. And I was terrified of them. And then suddenly in my late 20s, I was like, maybe I do like dogs. Um, and when I met my husband online, which I don't love to admit, what we started exchanging messages about how we both wanted a dog. And that was kind of like what we bonded over. And then 2 years later, we lived together and we had Winston.
I didn't see again. I've known you for how long and did not know that Winston was the point of bonding.
Yeah, yeah. We both kept talking about wanting a dog and how it didn't seem to fit into either of our lives at all. And then very, very shortly thereafter, it made a lot of sense and we adopted Winston. Um, and when we adopted him, I, Jacob, my husband, obviously, who you know, um, loves to tell people that I took to bed for a week, which is more or less entirely true. I got so overwhelmed and thought we had made the worst decision in the world and could not get up. Now, of course, he is my favorite little man, and yeah, it just brings me so much joy.
Winston is such an amazing little animal,
Mhm.
with such a huge personality. And I think I finally figured out to wear jeans when I come over to your house.
Yeah, he's not hugely well trained, but he is very enthusiastic. So
Absolutely.
there's a lot of leaping, there's a lot of licking, um, and yeah, he loves you, and he wants you to know that.
Yeah. And he's a great partner if you spend the night.
Mhm. Yeah, he is the canine hot water bottle.
So much so. Yes. I love Winston. So, but I was like, wait, we did not mention this dog. And there's no way we're doing this episode and not mentioning the crucial part of this family that's there.
Yeah, who I paid for a family photo shoot for his 10th birthday, where we all got matching sweaters, Jacob, Winston, and myself, and did a photo shoot out in Bushwick that is completely ridiculous and one of my favorite things I've ever done.
Yeah. And I, you know, I really, oh, maybe that's what I agreed with Jacob on the picture. Which one was better? The smiles or no smiles?
Oh, you like no smiles?
I think I do. I think it makes the ridiculous just that much more.
It is funnier.
I think it just, I think it enhances it. I
No.
think it enhances the whole experience just that much more. But then the smiles also do. Like Like it's just like I think I wrote like it's 49 to 51. Like I just cannot.
Yeah, that
It's just
photographer, Bowie Shoots, if anyone listening wants to look up her Instagram, all hits. Like everything she sent us was great.
I mean, I loved what you shared and I told you what I want. So
Yes. I have
yeah.
some prints to order.
You too. But I also need a completely ridiculous frame. Like
Yes.
this like gotta
Doable.
be,
Eminently doable.
yes, it's gotta be like so you guys. So sidetracking, sorry guys who are listening and watching. This is what happens when two friends for a very long time get together. So question, because I already said that I'm a big part of the self-publishing community and you are not. What are your feelings about the increasing nature of self-publishing? And you can say whatever, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to take it personally.
No, and I don't think my opinions will surprise or upset you. I think that self-publishing is great because it's provided an access point for a lot of people who didn't have an inroads into this very sort of cloistered community that is traditional publishing. So I think that there are a lot of difficulties. None of this is news to you, but but there are challenges self-publishing. You have to handle everything on your own. You have to find your editor or your copy editor. You have to do the cover design. You're your own marketing department. Everything is your responsibility. So in that way, I think that being traditionally published can be a lot easier, but there's also a ceding of control to corporate powers when you traditionally publish. So you might get an advance, but you're getting a smaller percentage of each individual sale. And you have several people working on your project who aren't you. So it's still your book. It's always your book, but there's a lot more feedback coming at you about how to position it, how to market it, what a sales team thinks about a cover, what a marketing team thinks about the copy that you've written or that somebody else has written. So I think independently publishing is always going to exist. I think that it's allowed a lot of writers to be discovered who wouldn't have otherwise. Um, and I think it's here to stay. I think there was a moment when, like 5 to 10 years ago, it felt like people thought everything would be self-publishing at a certain point and traditional publishing would just die. But I think there's room for both. And I think both are sort of necessary and can inform each other in really interesting ways that hopefully just lead to positive growth for everyone.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, no, I mean it's possible. I think especially for as a poet, so I'm biased, but I think especially for poetry, it has made it so much more possible to be out there. It's also made it so much more possible for garbage to be out there.
Yeah. Well, I think that in a lot of ways can be a point in favor of traditional publishing because gatekeepers do a lot of bad, but they also do some good because they can kind of like focus your attention from everything anybody wants to write onto people who have achieved some level of approval. There have been reviewers of this work before you're paying for it, and there's a sort of there's just an assumption that a certain amount of thought has been gone into any traditionally published book, and there are, as we all know, a lot of incredibly thoroughly vetted, independently published books, but there are also books that people finished a draft of and uploaded with a Microsoft Paint cover, and you're like, oh, okay, this no one needed to pay $2.99 for this. But then I'm not sure how to kind of help separate the wheat from the chaff and make sure that like the good work is what is being accessed. That's the challenge.
Yeah, but I think I go both ways with that. I spoke to somebody. I was like, yeah, I'm very elitist about writing and art and poetry, but it doesn't mean that not everyone should be able to do it. I think everyone should be able to do it. I don't think everyone should be taking up the space with it. Those are two very different points. I think you should be able to express yourself with it. I love singing. I spent a lot of years singing in a lot of choirs, like choruses in school and all that stuff. I would never do that publicly for reals, because I know that's not my lane. No, and I think
remember
people need to know that.
Yeah. I read a survey somewhere some number of years ago. I'm going to need to be fact checked, like how far Mamaroneck is from New York City. I read a survey that said something like 80% of American adults believe that they have a book in them that they could write, that people would want to read. And that number feels true and wrong at the same time, because that not everybody has a book in them. I don't believe that, but I know why people think they do. I think everybody has a story, but not everybody has a book. If that makes any sense. I don't think everyone has the rigor and the capacity to translate their story into language. And that might be a little elitist of me, but that's how I feel.
But no, you're right. And I'm so I just fact checked you. 25 miles from Union Square to Mamaroneck.
Okay.
And that is relatively straight, because I mean it is roads, but it's still like there's not a lot of not straight.
Okay.
That. So
just clip in me saying 25 over whatever I said earlier.
I will not, but it was a good moment of us having a it was a really great moment for us. But because I was looking up something else, and that's why I was like, since you just said the fact check thing, let's go to the Google. And I can't figure out where it is, but it's somewhere in Europe. There used to be a thing where everyone would write a book. And I thought it was Sweden, but I'm not sure that it's Sweden. But there was like a place where like everyone just wrote books, like everyone self-published books, and that was a thing that it was a cultural thing to do. And so I think I get you, and I agree with you, but I think a lot of people, I think it's exactly what you said. I don't think most people have the energy to do it. You know how many people part of the reason why I started charging for my work and my consultation was because most people would waste my time otherwise. And so I give you all this information on how to do the work. And then they were like, oh yeah, I'm good. So I wasted an hour, 2 hours of my time giving you all the steps that you needed to know just to get started. And you did nothing with that information.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna need you to put money down to prove that you're at least wanting to put some energy behind this. And it's not because I just want money, but you're wasting my time. And trust me, if you look at my calendar right now, my calendar got things going on until the end of well, actually I got things booked on my calendar with a D, not a T, up until August.
I was waiting for you to say like 2032.
I mean, I might as well. But like I have plans up until like the 2 weeks after my birthday. And this is April that we're recording this episode. This will not appear in April, but this is April when we're recording this. So just to give you an idea that like I got 4 months worth of stuff on my calendar already. So I made time for you to have this conversation, and yet you could not respect my time enough to do something with that information I gave you. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of people who want to do it, and then they hear it's a lot of work, and then they back out of it immediately. So I do agree. Everyone has a story, and there may be different vehicles in which to tell that story. They may just need to be on somebody's podcast. They may just need to be on a panel somewhere. They may just need to do it some other, make it art piece of artwork, you know, but it's not a book necessarily to do it, because it's a lot of work. This is not a, no matter which way you go with this industry, it is a lot of work, because the first part of the work is the writing. The most of the work is the editing. And even if you have a copy editor, you still got to deal with people telling you what went wrong and needing to fix it and move it forward and do all that work. So it ain't just done. The writing was the easy part. And if you're doing it yourself, man, good luck, Godspeed. You know?
Yeah. I'm so kind of error prone and catch so many mistakes when I review my own work. The idea of someone putting a cover on something I've written without somebody else's eyes on it is terrifying.
Yeah. I can't tell you how many people read Still Laughing. I cannot tell you how much I paid for an editor. And when someone after the book went live read it and was like, oh, and what about these things? I was just like, I can't even read the book anymore. Like, and I was like, I don't think there's a million typos in it, but to know that, like, it's like, I just can't. I feel so defeated after all the money and time and months spent in re-editing and rewriting and fixing and cleaning and trying to get it done. And I mean, at some point, every book, even properly written books, still like agent going through the whole process, there's still a typo. There's still several typos, but still, like, you're just sort of defeated by the time you're done. After you done did all of that, because there's a lot of eyes on Still Laughing. And to see that we still let that stuff go.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've seen it happen with all sorts of books, where whether it's, you know, like a comma that went missing somewhere along the way, or a character's name that just wholly changed in the middle of a book. You just, it's so easy for something to be missed, which I think, again, is why copy editors are kind of the superheroes of publishing, because they have to be so incredibly focused on every single letter and every piece of punctuation, while also keeping this bird's eye view of how it all factors into the larger story. And that is, it's just two different ways of viewing something, and to put them on top of each other feels, I could not do it. So yeah. I just have profound respect for the people who can.
After the one class I took, I was like, I think I'm done. But also I'm like, maybe. So I like leaned in, and then I was just like,
but am I?
Yeah, like I kind of want to. And then once I got my tax refund, I was like, I could afford it now. But you also hated that whole process.
Yeah.
let's be real about both of this. Like, do you really want to do this? Like, do you really want to really dig into this? But I have my APA book right in front of me.
Oh my God, I just thought back a question you asked a little bit ago.
Yes, go ahead.
You're saying something that I regret, or something that I would have changed. Mm-hmm. And this discussion reminds me of a time when I was 23 years old and I was editing a novel for a client, and I thought, oh, she doesn't have a great sense of how to use commas. And so I Xeroxed the pages of the ALA handbook about how to use commas and mailed that to her. Not ever thinking like, oh, this might feel profoundly insulting. Never thinking like, oh, this is a conversation to have. This is not something to show up in the mail. And it's something we still work together 20 years later. Very proud of us for having gotten over that hump. But I can only imagine what opening that envelope felt like.
Mm.
And I still think, what a jerk move of this cocky child that I was, who was like, I'm being helpful. Here I am helping. And I mean, yeah, I wouldn't do that again.
Yeah. Yeah. And then like it's also tricky too, because you know, like when you're talking about people with coming from different vernaculars, right?
Yeah.
There's I can't think of his, you've read him because we've talked about him.
I
I
need a
cannot say
little
his
more than
name.
that.
I can't say his name though. It starts with a K. Keys.
Oh, Casey
Yes.
Lehman?
Yes.
I'm not 100% sure I pronounced that right either.
Yeah. So I didn't want to try and get it wrong. But when you look at his book, and his book is written in Southern Black language. So it's not even just like typical AAE or AAVE, depending how you're talking about it, but it's like Southern. So it may even be tied to Gullah Geechee a little bit. Like who knows which version of Black English this is, right?
Yeah.
Or African American English this is, but he's writing in Southern.
Yeah.
And I'm a Northerner. So even for me, it was like, okay, all right, I got it. Okay, here we go. And it's beautiful and amazing. But even that gets tricky to edit and follow. I mean, yes, you're paying attention for the consistency of the writing, but like it drives me nuts when I'm reading someone's book and their cuz changes.
Right.
Were you doing cause? Were you doing cuz? Were you doing apostrophe cause for cuz? Were you
Yeah.
doing CUS? Were you doing CUZ? Are you talking about cousin? Are you talking about because? Like, I need you to be, and then to change it from one poem to another. I'm gonna need you to be somewhat consistent across the book. You know, like when you do that, and like going from sis to bro to sister to like what are we doing? And even if it may change from poem to poem or something, but like having, and like, are you apostrophizing or not, depending where you are, all of that is so much more difficult. And then it is insulting if you, and I don't know what the person is that you were writing with, but it is insulting if you said that to me and I knew what I was doing and I was
Yeah.
purposely dropping off the G's because that's not what Black folk do. I mean, that's what Black folk do. We be
Yeah.
writing. Not have to
Yeah.
find a new agent.
No, truly. And it's interesting. I'm actually working with an author right now on a book about sort of, it's kind of about how much grammar doesn't matter in a way. It's about how English is only a living language because it's constantly changing. And without new words, without different vernaculars, there is then a language would just die. So, how do you edit a book to be as readable and as consistent and as clean as humanly possible, while also respecting that there aren't really any rules that can't be broken. There's no absolute. So yeah, it makes for a lot of challenging and also interesting and exciting conversations about sort of who gets to decide and how you approach that process. But yeah, it's 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 yeah,
Yeah,
a question I'm actively asking.
you gotta love words and language to get into
Yeah.
those spaces. And I just found out about it's not new, but a piece of punctuation that I've seen, but I didn't know. And now I'm like, oh, you best believe it's gonna be in my poetry now because it's so me. It is the Oh, I can't say the name because it's not coming to my head right now, but it's the question mark and exclamation point in the same
The
piece of,
interrobang.
yes, interrobang. I was like, the interrobang? So I was like, that may be my first tattoo. Like,
We're gonna
like,
use
yes,
this
please.
soon.
I was like, I mind you, I have no tattoos. I have no interest in tattoos, but I was like, the interrobang is, forget the semicolon that everyone's getting. Just give me the interrobang. That's
No,
more Dara.
that is a powerful symbol.
It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
And it saves you like all the extra space
Yeah.
because it sums up both.
Yeah.
When I found out about that this weekend, I wrote it down. I took a copy of it. I put it into my document. I was like, yes, bet you it's going to show. And it's so perfect for my next books. You
Yeah,
know,
I don't know how to type it, but
oh, you
once you
just,
figure it out,
oh, you know how to put it. You don't know how to use it. If you're in Word, just go to the symbols. Everything's in special symbols.
okay.
And then you may just have to type in Terabang, but it'll also all the specials. That's how you get to the M dash and the N dash, and there's a difference in why you use them. And like I've learned all, like, cause I took the copy editing class because I didn't understand N dashes and M
Yeah.
dashes and when you use them. And now I know. I still don't understand an M dash, but I am starting to finally understand a little bit more because M dashes, parentheses, and commas are all used in the same context, sort of.
Yeah.
So it makes it like, but no one uses parentheses anymore. So when you get rid of the idea that no one uses parentheses, then you only have the M dash and the comma, but usually M dash is more expressive, not just a side
Right.
thought, but there's always like a little bit more of an expression to it and how we normally use it. So it's like the sarcasm linking through it, not just an additional thought.
Yeah. So but it then it turns it into sort of like a you know it when you see it
Yes.
version of punctuation.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know that I don't know how often I get it right, but I do use it all the time.
I never use it because I'm always like, when do you use it? But now that I'm looking at my 2 commas in places, I'm like, okay, that's a little bit more sarcastic. So I can do an M dash now. And I know where to find it without doing 3 dashes.
I love it.
So like I did learn some stuff from that. So something frustrating about the community for you.
Oh God. I think the most frustrating thing is that so many great books never see the light of day. And other great books get published and no one finds them. And I don't have an answer to it. I don't know how to solve that, how to kind of convince people to read.
Well, these days people are not reading the right things for sure.
Yeah. And
We're
I mean,
banning all the books, so
well, oh my God, the book banning is a disaster. I mean, that probably is. I mean, yeah, I'm almost loath to call that a frustration because I think it's a much larger, more endemic problem than that. But it just there's space for everything. There's space for escapism and fun and joy. And there's space for sort of seriousness and interrogation. And I think I just wish more people read. I think I really, at the end of the day, wish more people read more books. And and it's sometimes disheartening to see, yeah, really, really beautiful work not find the readership I think it deserves. Um, and admitting, I think as an agent, admitting that you don't have ultimate control is always the hardest part because you're like, well, it's my job to sell the book and to make sure that it's edited well and to make sure the publisher does well by it and to make sure the audiences find it. And then you have to admit that it's not all up to you. And I'm not one who loves to like focus on my limitations. So that is always that can be incredibly, incredibly challenging.
Yeah, I mean, I tell people all the time, the one thing that I miss the one thing I hate the most about the pandemic was that I don't read it the same way. And then the one thing I was loving about getting my infusions was that I would sit in my infusions and read, but now I'm being drugged because of fear of an allergy response. So I'm too drugged to pay attention. Like
Yeah.
that was like my moment to like relax. Like, let me open up one of my friend's books. So I have so many books I have to get through. Let me read it. I have not made any way through because that's the one time I get to read. And I'm like, oh, and Benadryl.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the end of that. So I miss reading. I miss reading. I like there's so many books I want to read so badly. And I'm like, that's gonna be the next one. And then I pick up the other one. So that's gonna be the next one. And I'm just
Do you know
looking
how
forward
many
to time.
piles of to be read next books I have, like just surrounding my immediate presence? There are at least 5 piles, 10 books high, that at some point were the pile that I would read next. And it's just chaos. There's never going to be enough time. And I know some people think there's something like really exciting about that like there's always going to be another great book to read, but I find it much more overwhelming than satisfying.
I mean, part of me is like, I have a two-sided thing to that, right? And it's part of the industry. I have so many friends whose books I've bought that I want to do right by them and read it and review them.
Mm,
And so part of it is like, well, thankfully a lot of them are poetry, so they wouldn't take me a lot of time if I just sit down and read them.
mm.
But when am I going to sit
But
down and read
yeah.
them? And then tomorrow, a new friend's going to drop a book. And I'm like, well, I got to buy the next book because it's my friend and I got to support these people. So, especially during the pandemic, I supported everybody. And anyone who said they had a book and I knew them, I bought their books. So, I like have that picture I sent you of my desk. A lot of those are my friends' books.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm going to read that soon. When?
Yeah.
And so I get it because it's the same exact issue. And then, like, without having the same commute into work, I can't read on the train because I have to either read on the train, sleep on the train, or write the next thing that I didn't write yesterday. So I can run out of time to do the things
Yeah.
because I can only do one thing and I only have one train ride to do it in. So it's sad. I miss it. I think I'm gonna read on my Amtrak ride tomorrow. I'll
Well,
put
and
on
that's
everything.
why I pack so many books for the holidays. That's why I bring like 8 to 10 books on vacation, because I just want to drink it all in when I can finally say, I'm not supposed to do work right now. I can put down my Kindle and I can pick up books that have already been published,
Mm,
and there's so much joy in that.
yeah, I think I'm gonna do that on my trip now that you've said that. Just grab a couple of these books that I want to read and just sit down and maybe read one real one. Just like some of the poetry books that are light and small. But like I have a Joy Harjo book that I want to read. I read her memoir. I have another one of
Mm,
hers that I want to read. I want to read one of her poetry books. And, she was the last poet laureate. Like I want to dig into her poetry now.
yeah,
See how you get there. Because I
yeah.
plan on being a poet laureate one day too.
I
Even
love
if it's
that.
in my head. We'll see. So can you tell me a fun fact about yourself, Jim?
Oh God, what is a fun fact about me? Um, why did I don't know
Told you
why
this is the
my
one
first two
that
things.
stumps people.
Well, you already know this, but I will say that a lot of people are amused to know that I once broke my foot trying to get to SpongeBob the musical on Broadway. I face planted in the middle of Times Square and leapt up, knew something horrible had happened in my foot, but still made it to the theater, uh, but did not sit through the show. I did then get in a cab and go to urgent care, where it was revealed that I had broken my foot trying to see a children's musical.
Wait, did you see any of the show?
I eventually,
No, I
after,
mean, no. I know you saw it after the fact,
yeah,
but you said you made it to the theater. I didn't
oh,
think I realized
I
that.
made it to the theater and I said, I had won lotto tickets for it. And I was like, I think I just broke my foot. Can I come back for these later? And they said, no. these are not exchangeable. So I just left. I just left and got in a cab. But like some stupid part of my brain was like, you have tickets, don't waste them. Um, yeah, no, I didn't see any of the show that day.
But I can't be mad at you because remember, I'm the one who fractured my elbow, sprained my ankle, hurt my other arm, and still walked into a meeting.
Yeah. And then like showed up for dinner with me that night.
Oh no, different. No, that's not that one. I mean, that
Oh,
was
that
not
was a
the same
different.
day. No, that was a couple of weeks later. But when I did that in St. Louis. I showed up to a meeting. Like I fractured my elbow, sprained my ankle, hurt my arm. Didn't even know my other arm was hurt. The police came. Did you need to go to the hospital? I said no. My friend messaged me like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine." But what's the best hospital to go to? I'm in the meeting already, and I'm texting. I was like, "This hurts." As I try to text you, that's what gave it away. That and the tears running down my face.
Sure.
So,
Yeah. Those are clues 1 and 2.
but like I didn't know my arm elbow was fractured. I was just like, I gotta get to the meeting. I gotta get to the meeting.
Yeah.
So you had to go to the show. So
Yeah.
I'm not gonna even call you any kind of name for that because I'm guilty.
Yeah.
When you
I was
have
supposed
that
to be
place
there.
you have to be at, that's the most important thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's because we're broken people. Like we're not supposed to value making it to a destination more than our physical health. But here we are.
Oh, my answer to all things now is capitalism.
It's
What it does to us
really, really true.
it's just horrible for us. But
Yeah.
yeah. So did you enjoy the play?
I did. When I saw it, I thought it was kind of great. I mean, I don't think it was worth breaking my foot over, but the design was incredible. The cast was amazing. It had a lot to recommend it. Yeah.
I think they played the video of it because I think I saw the video. I think there was
Mhm.
like I think like Nickelodeon had put it on or something at some point. So I think I saw it. And it was very fascinating to witness.
Yeah, I found it really like visually beautiful and like stimulating. So much was happening. It was exciting.
Yeah, like he climbed the scaffolding at some point in the show, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, so yeah,
Yeah.
I did watch that. Yeah, that was cool. So thankfully I didn't have to leave my house because I would probably have broken something too. So what advice do you have to someone who may want to be a literary agent?
Yeah, I would say that it's a tough business to break into. So keep an eye out for any opportunity where you can get a start at an agency that is paying you a salary because agents work on commission, but if you start agenting day one, you're not going to see a single payment, even if you're amazing at your job for several months. And
Mm,
so there's just no way into it if you're not sort of just financially self-sustaining unless you can find a salaried position, which is what I did. I started working on the financials and royalties side as an assistant, and then sort of slowly was able to start introducing clients to my list and went off salary and commission only when I knew that I could sustain myself. And I don't think that there are enough of those positions in publishing. Um, but I think if you want to do it, ruthlessly look for any of those opportunities because that's the only way to do it and survive.
awesome. And then what advice do you have for someone who is looking for a literary agent?
Oh, I think there's so much advice. I would say more than anything, do a ton of research. You can find out so much about people online, and there are many author websites dedicated to stories and people's experiences with various agents. So, probably everyone has someone saying something mean on them somewhere on the internet, but like look for patterns and and try to avoid anyone who just doesn't feel right, and only work with someone that you feel comfortable with, because you're really trusting this person with work that is incredibly personal and valuable to you. So I think there's a tendency that some people have to sign with any agent just because it's the first offer they got and they don't have another. And I think that if you can, hold out until someone you want to work with is an option.
Mm. Okay.
Fully accepting that not everybody has that luxury, but yeah, do what you can.
Got it. So how do we connect with you?
How do people connect with me? I have really retreated running and screaming from most social media. Um, there is all of my contact info and how to like query me and find out more about me professionally is on my agency's website, which is dystel.com, dystel.com. Yeah, I think that's probably the main place.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jim, for speaking on behalf of, and thank you everyone who's been listening today.
Thank you for having me. It was a joy to see your face as ever.